And good evening. We are live. It is Sunday, 21st of June. It's 8 p.m. in the evening here in the UK. You can probably hear the bells just in the distance there. So we're bang on time. Welcome along to Pro Synth Network Live. This is episode 12. We're still going strong, and we have a full house again. Why don't we go and say hello to everyone, to Chris, to Ben, and our special guest today, Sean Christopher Dockery. Hello, one and everyone. How are you?
How's it going?
Good to see you all. So we've got plenty to get through. So without further ado, let's do our usual trip around the houses. We'll go to our illustrious leader, Ben Simpson, first. Ben, hi, how are you? And what have you been up to, apart from buying new earbuds or whatever they're called?
Birthday present.
Ah, very nice.
Birthday present. It was my birthday yesterday.
Yes, belated happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, one of my birthday presents was an external SSD drive. So I'm currently in the process of downloading all my soft synths and plugins and attempting to run them from that between two computers. Nice. So I only have to have one install for the two. I don't know if it's going to work, but that's mainly what I've been up to. Pretty boring, really, though.
Yeah, you and your SSDs in the last couple of weeks, you've been SSDing the hell out of everything, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm quite happy now. Everything's really fast.
Good, excellent. But hopefully your productivity will improve as well in terms of speed. Yes? No?
I doubt it.
Okay, fair enough. Let's move across to California. Say hello to Chris. How are you, Chris?
Hey, everyone.
How have you been, and what have you been up to?
It's been a busy week, a lot of strange coincidences, but one of my favorites was on June 18th. I finally made a purchase, which is...
You bought the best Beatles song in the world. Oh, no, you bought the Ricky. Excellent.
I love the flute.
Yeah.
And so it arrived this morning, so I've been having a little bit of fun.
Oh, wow.
But I didn't realize that the cool thing is I hadn't realized that when I purchased it, it was on Paul McCartney's birthday, so kind of fun about that.
It was meant to be. Meant to be. Now, all you need is the Sergeant Pepper's outfit, and you'll look the part there. Is that a genuine Ricky then?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a brand new one.
Brand new as well. Wow.
We designed the bridge for those that care, and this is the same style that Paul McCartney would use. It's an updated version of it, but that was one of the reasons.
Whoa. Hang on, are you telling me that they're sticking with the design that they had in the 60s? They've not made it all digital with a touchscreen in the middle?
Who's got... it's Matt Bellamy from Muse has got the Korg Chaosillator, hasn't he, built into his guitar. That's cool. That's very
Same
cool.
with the bassist.
Yeah. Cool. Right, okay, let's move on to our special guest this week, Mr. Sean Christopher Dockery in, if I pronounce this right, Boise, Idaho?
Yes,
Yay!
Boise, Idaho.
Excellent, welcome.
Well, it's nice to be here.
That's great.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. So, in the world of music, what have you been up to lately?
Lately, I've been working on an independent film, which... Now they're going to be doing some reshooting. They weren't happy with the last cut, and they want new music cues. So, with the virus going around, so they're going to be a little behind on that. So, it's giving me more time to think of some ideas. What else this year? Made some nice purchases on some vintage synths, about an OB8 and a Korg Trident.
Nice.
A1. Got through a nice earthquake a couple months ago. Shook up my studio pretty good. A lot of my lights and stuff came down, but other than that, been a great year.
Excellent. So we find you. Is this your studio? Is this based at home, or are you in a separate location?
My home studio.
Excellent.
Yeah.
It looks very nice, I must say,
yeah,
especially the lighting. Are those real jellyfish?
Don't tell the animal rights activists, but no, they're plastic, but they get I guess there's some water flow in there.
Yeah, They look very good.
Yeah,
I've got something
that-
similar in Star Wars with TIE fighters and X-wings that but it's tucked away somewhere. I don't know where it is. Anyway, great to have you on the show, Sean. And I'm sure I'm going to make a pig's ear of saying that. Sean Show. So I need to get some practice in. Also known as Quantum 7, I believe, on YouTube.
On Gearful. Yeah.
In various places. So we'll be chatting with you. Yeah, we'll be chatting with you in a bit more depth a little bit later on. But as we normally do, we're going to crack on with some of the discussion topics that have cropped up this week. We seem to have good weeks and bad weeks, and I think this is a fairly kind of middle of the road week. There's some good stuff. Shall we kick off with this one, which is the Moog One firmware update to version 1.4. Cryss, you've got one, a Moog One. Have you updated?
Yeah.
What do you
actually,
think?
it's a bit early. I was, not too early, but they sent it to me earlier in the week. And so I've only got about 30 or 40 minutes on it, but it does seem to have taken care of a lot of the tuning issues in the low register. And the higher registers didn't really have any tuning issues. So, yeah, that's kind of something that has we've been waiting for.
Yeah, because it says here, major update that adds oscillator compensation calibration to the Moog One's tuning algorithm to provide real-time tuning compensation across the range of the instrument. And that's something I'd heard particularly from yourself and from our friend Simon Alexander, who was mentioning about that. So I guess that this is a very welcome update for yourself and for Moog One owners.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's probably the biggest gripe of Moog One users. Like, sometimes in the lower octaves, it's a little funky. And so they had mentioned quite a while ago that they were going to do this. And so we've been waiting every update, like, is that in there yet?
Yeah.
So I probably still has a little ways to go on as far as how well it works. But, I mean, just immediately, it's much more enjoyable to play, especially for like basses or really low parts.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything else of note in the update?
They did a few other things. I think there was something with the sequencer, but sequencers are against my religion, so I don't ever use it. But yeah, the main part of the update was really just the tuning calibration.
Sure. I was flicking through the website and I thought, you get a version of Lisa Belladonna in your studio, but a lovely picture of her on the update page there, which we're looking at synths, but it's always nice when Lisa pops up there. So all in all, a favourable update, yeah.
Yeah, and they also included some presets from her, I think, as well.
Oh, cool. Good. Well, I think it's been due, and it's certainly a welcome thing. Sean, have you got a Moog One?
I had one.
Oh.
And, unfortunately, the fan was just a little loud for me, so I decided to. I got rid of it. I wish I had it still. I'll get another one. I'm just hoping they quiet that fan down just a little bit. Maybe I have extra sensitive ears, but it was just a little loud for me.
Is there any control over the fan in terms of speed?
Yeah, actually, probably after the point that Sean sold it, they added a quiet mode.
Yep, I know. I heard about that. I was like, you got to be kidding me. You had to wait. Yeah, I'll get another one.
It's funny because I was messing around with my Akai S6000 over the weekend, and one I'd got it on, and I have a Fairlight sat down here as well, so I know what noise is like. And I thought, blimey, that sounds quite noisy. And then I remembered it's actually got this setting that you can just turn it into quiet mode. But I'm actually thinking about getting a new fan for it that runs even quieter still. But those Moog Ones apparently creak as they get hotter as well, don't they?
Yeah.
I've never had that issue with mine.
No?
Yeah, no. I had it with mine.
Yeah, because Simon said that his creaks, which is odd. But there you go. It's a powerful beast.
Oh, yeah. I changed the fan in my S6000.
Did you? Yeah.
It's really loud. and I just completely disabled it in the EMU.
Yeah.
Didn't think it needed it with the card reader in it.
I was having a conversation with someone earlier this week, and we're talking about fitting SCSI to SD, converters, and they said, "Oh, well, I've got a SCSI drive in there." And I thought, blimey, a SCSI drive and a fan in one of those things that's not, the best soundproof thing in the world. That thing must make a heck of a racket and get really hot. So, but there you go. He was adamant that a SCSI drive was a better option than an SD card, which, go figure. Moving swiftly on, I'm going to let's do a couple of personal plugs, one for me, one for Cryss. So, as you may know, if I just get the topic section up here, as you may know, I've been commissioned by Sound on Sound to do a series of podcasts, an ongoing series of podcasts. The first one of which I'm very pleased to announce came out early this week, just gone on Tuesday, and it's an interview with a hero of mine and pioneer of British electronic music, and I guess electronic music overall, Mr. David Vorhaus of The White Noise. And if you're not sure who The White Noise are, let me just bring this up. Seminal electronic music album. Get the glare of the light off there. An absolutely fantastic piece. White Noise were David Vorhaus, Delia Derbyshire, and Brian Hodgson from the Radiophonic Workshop. And I had the immense pleasure of going to visit David last year, December I think it was, and we spent the whole day in his loft studio in North London, and we talked about Fairlights because he owns the first one that came into the UK. He was also responsible for the very famous and probably most sample in the world, the Orc 5 or Orc 2 hit, depending on which side of the fence you sit on with the names. And he also whacked out his incredibly phallic kaleidophone instrument, which is this amazing instrument that features 4 kind of strips of plastic that plays a bit like a double bass. And it is linked primarily to his VCS3, which again was a serial number 1. It's just incredible. And he's got a fantastic little studio. And he also built a thing called the Maniac Sequencer, which stands for something, and I never remember it, 'cause it's like multiphasic analog noise something, I don't know. It's bonkers, and it was way ahead of its time. And he's now recreated it in Reactor, Native Instruments Reactor. So he has that on a laptop and then uses an iPad on stage to control that. But anyway, that interview is up now. It's about half an hour long, where we talk about his involvement with the Fairlight and the Kaleidophone and the Maniac and a few other bits and bobs. So subscribe and go and listen to that. It's all completely free of charge. And in other news, our very own Cryss has produced his own demonstration video here of Valhalla's Supermassive plugin with a advert sticking up in the middle of it. No, let's try and go back here. What's going on here? It's technology.
Both of these.
Oh, there
both of them have Valhalla Supermassive. What you see on the screen here.
So there you go. We'll skip through that, but it's a half-hour-long video which you do not get bored at all, because Cryss is putting his Prophet 6 and a Moog Matriarch through Valhalla's wonderful Supermassive plugin. Here. And it's a really great demonstration there, Cryss. Well done on that one. Really enjoyed that.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, it's fun to work with that. These are some presets that I've been working on for a Prophet 6 sound set, and then just got to have some fun with Supermassive.
Yeah.
I know Sean's also a big Valhalla fan too.
Yeah.
Do you use much of the Valhalla stuff, Cryss? Sorry, Sean.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I have every one of the reverbs. I hadn't tried the Supermassive until Cryss. I saw the video and I'm like, oh, I didn't even hear about it. And oh my God, it sounds Supermassive.
Excellent. Do you have a particular favorite Valhalla plugin? Because I mean, that's a difficult one. It's like choosing your favorite child, I think.
Yeah. Oh my God, what's the original one with the black hole setting?
Oh yes.
Oh my gosh, I'm at a loss for word. The name of it. Anyway, it's the one with a white interface.
Yeah.
That just has about
Shimmer?
10 presets. Shimmer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Shimmer.
that is the one that I reach for first because I love huge reverb with synth.
Yes.
Too much at times. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't think that's possible, is it?
Yeah.
yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
I like to cite as evidence Blade Runner and Vangelis.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, the entire Blade Runner score was just him brushing against the synth with his leg, and the reverb that carried it through the rest of the film.
It's lexicon.
Yeah. Oh, you can't beat because working with a lot of vintage synthesizers, they just didn't have any effects built in, and then you can actually see the history of effects through synthesizers. So everything pre-86, I think, just had nothing in it, and then
wasn't it the P50 that kind of started?
Yeah, that was kind of the first one that had
a proper. We had chorus before, didn't we? Yeah.
Well,
I think P50 was one of the very first I'd ever heard of that had reverb on it.
with a dedicated effects processor. But what happened with some synthesizers, like with the DX11 or the TX81Z, instead of having it, they've got effects, but they're not. It's not a dedicated effects chip. It's MIDI, and so that eats into your note count and your polyphony, and so it's useful, but it's not good. But it's you can't beat putting something through a nice, even if it's just a guitar pedal. It really just does change the whole thing. So
nothing beat external effects. Good external effect processor versus using what's on board most synths.
Yeah, definitely.
Never sound quite as good as like taking the Supermassive or a hardware effects.
Yeah. It doesn't sound good, but it's good for live, isn't it? Because you can have part of the the sound and get a close enough version for live use, I think.
Yeah.
But I think in the studio you'd probably tend not to use the synth effects, wouldn't you? They're never really that great.
Definitely.
It's kind of interesting that it took so long for synthesis to really get into effects. Everything was recorded so dryly. I mean, going all the way back to the late 50s or mid 50s, even guitarists were immediately like, what can we do with the sound? How can we mangle it? How can we change it? And then, like the story of the Univox Univibe. I mean, that was made for keyboards to simulate a Leslie sound. It was done with a 4-stage phaser, but I can't ever think of really being used that much on keyboards, but you hear, Jimi Hendrix and a lot of other guitar, Robin Trower, picked that up really in the early days. But now that it has, maybe, some of the stuff that Vangelis had done in the early 80s, and I don't know who else that really started pushing effects on it, but I love it. I think it sounds great.
Yeah, they're definitely useful tools. So let's move on to the next topic, which is maybe not so earth-shattering, but it's interesting in a number of ways. It's Novation with their Mark III Launchkey controllers. And they seem to be going down this design route of very straight-edged, multicolored pad type things. Everyone seems to be going through that black, very sharp-looking stuff. What's interesting about this, certainly for the first thing that grabbed me, was this addition of a 37-note controller. Because normally you go 25, 61, 40, 25, 49, 61, and if you're lucky, a 73 or an 88. And they've put in a good old 37-note, which the 37-note keybed seems to be making a bit of a comeback, doesn't it? What's the Argon 8 is a 37-note. The Wave State, is the Wave State 37? So there seems to be space in people's setups now for 37-note
Is that because it can really fit in a laptop bag, maybe? Is that too big to go in a laptop bag?
I think that might be a little bit too big. I mean, to kind of give you a size reference, if I tilt my camera up there, so the Korg Prophecy, that is a 37 note.
Oh, right, full size keys.
So once you get full size keys, it's a little odd. So 25 is fine. I mean, I've got a 25 note Behringer controller. Shut up. I can see you pointing at.
No, I'm just thinking, hey, Is that sub 37 key?
But
Just like me. Wow!
whoa,
Just made it to the next level.
yeah. But
Oh, sure,
it's
okay.
interesting that they've thrown in a 37 note. I think it's probably the first 37 note controller I've seen, unless I'm mistaken. I don't remember seeing a 37 notes.
Doesn't IK Multimedia make one, or they did?
I don't think so. I thought that I could be wrong, but I thought they only ever made 25, 49, 61.
Yeah, like
and,
5, same thing.
Yeah.
49.
Actually, no. I'm just trying to think now.
Let me look.
Yeah, go and have a look. Yeah, but the news is that Launchkey Mark III has landed with a whole bunch of customization options, Ableton Live integration, these wonderful coloured pads that everybody seems to be using, and it's available in 25, 37, 49, and 61 key variants. They do say that the 25 and 37 key models are perfect for mobile producers. I guess it all depends how mobile you want to be. So yeah, standalone operation. It comes with a whole bunch of light versions of software. So yeah, it's a nice looking thing. There you go, 37 iRig piano. Yeah, that looks right.
I haven't seen it in a long time.
But yeah, it's a fairly unique offering. But Novation are known for making some very good controllers. Anybody use Novation controllers in the room here? No,
I haven't.
No, I've got Arturia, I've got Akai, Behringer. I've got a Behringer somewhere. But I don't have.
Is it Guy Micklemore? Is it the composing?
Oh
guy?
yeah, Guy
He's
Mitchell.
just-
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's just bought an 88 key one, and according to his YouTube channel, he says it's the best, hands down, the best controller he's ever had.
What, the Novation?
Yeah, I think so.
Or a
yeah.
Novation? Yeah. Oh, they're certainly a very good brand. Who are they owned by? Are they still? Are they? I thought they got bought out. They're part of the Focusrite group, aren't they? Or Focusrite are part of the Novation group. So it's Focusrite, Adam, Audio, Amplify, and stuff. Yeah. Yeah, nice, interesting thing. Are you much of a controller user, Sean?
I used to, but I bought a Montage, and I've been using that as my main DAW controller.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, 88 note before, but I got a grand piano downstairs, and I tend to not do much piano stuff, so I wanted to have synth action, so I got the Montage 7.
Okay.
Nice.
Happy with that.
Cool.
What door is it that you use?
Cubase.
Yeah, so
I've
that
been using
integrates.
Cubase since the late 80s.
Yeah,
On the
they
Atari.
could both be in Yamaha. The integration's pretty good, isn't it?
Great integration.
Yeah.
Always good. Always good.
Mm.
I'm just waiting.
I've always liked controllers. Sorry, Robbie.
No.
I've always liked controllers, and I think the best one I've ever had was the Roland MKB 1000. I don't know if you've ever seen that. It's from when they started doing all the MKSs. The rack mounts of everything, and it was absolutely fantastic. But it was massive. It was a 3-person lift.
Yeah.
And just putting it in this room. This room's that small that I had no room for anything else. I had a mattress and a pillar on top of it, so I could get my head down. And I sold that, but I've heard a lot of people saying that they consider that to be the best controller ever. And all the buttons look like Jupiter 6 controls as well.
Oh, very nice.
That's really nice. Like, it's got a dead retro kind of feel to it.
What?
But now I just use synths. I think the profit's really good, especially for I know it's only 4-octave, but when you've got Omnisphere, the integration in that, how it does that hardware. I think it works really well with things like that, because everything does what it says on the synth, so it does really feel like using hardware.
Yeah.
Whereas mapping controls yourself is a bit, I don't know, it's not the same.
It's one.
The key beds on the Prophet 6 and OB6 are my favorite. The are on there. I like it better than the Fitar key bed on the Moog One.
Wow.
it's a little bit lighter action. The Moog One is a little bit heavier, which might do better for some things, but just for me and my uses, I actually, that Prophet keybed is killer.
Yeah, it's a good keyboard.
Yeah, I like the integration on Arturia's controllers that goes with the V Collection, Analog Lab, all that kind of stuff. And like I say, it's just so easy. You just turn it on, everything talks to each other. You choose a patch name on the computer, it comes up on the controller. All the controls are individually mapped, and it works really, really nicely. But it's like sample formats. There are so many different types of format out there that nobody can actually gather them all together and make a universal controller that satisfies everything. I know Akai did this thing with their first proper keyboard controllers, where you had different templates, but they never really worked that well. And then the software gets updated and that integration gets broken.
Yeah.
So
that Akai, Azioed's just saying that he's got an Akai MPK, which I've not used that, but I did have the Max one. Do you remember that Max one where it had touch faders? I had that, and the template system was just so annoying and confusing. It was just like, whoa, what's going on here? I think I got it to work with Cubase once, and I never touched it again. It was like just stay there. I couldn't use any other software because it worked.
Yeah, I mean, I've given mine to my son, the Akai MPK 49, and he's got Logic. He's running Logic on his Mac, and when he tries to map the setting, the Logic setting on there, it doesn't work because they're so out of sync now in terms of updates that they don't support the controller anymore. So it just gets it. This is one controller that I really still hanker after, and I almost bought one, but at the time I just didn't have the space for it. And it's this thing, the Oberheim MC1000. They also did an MC3000 as well, and these things are built like absolute tanks. Proper 88 keys, and just really, really strong, and they're just dedicated MIDI controllers with no real kind of bells and whistles on them, but solid as a rock. And I really, there was one local to me, and he wasn't asking a huge amount of money. I just had no room for it, so I kind of had to pass up on that one, but never mind.
Seen that so many people are, when they talk about really great controllers, are talking about older controllers, old Kurzweil, and
I had that one. It was just awesome, which I still, but it was a huge. My God, I'd kill myself.
I would be surprised to see, like in the next year or two, that controllers start really coming up in quality. And we've had all those junky. I mean, this iRig Key Pro is about as junky as you can get.
Yeah.
The USB connection doesn't work really well, and that's what I used before I really got into synthesizers. But I mean, that's something that everybody's been clamoring for. And then along with the development of like ASM and Behringer developing Poly Aftertouch for sort of keybeds, like that's, I mean, if somebody put out a Poly Aftertouch controller that had oh yeah, man, people would go nuts over that.
Yeah. Native VS says in the chat room he'd really like a KX88 with the Poly Aftertouch, and those old Yamaha controllers are still
like one of those in a band.
Yeah, they're just solid.
That heavy feel.
Yeah.
Did the KX88 have polyphonic aftertouch?
I believe it did. I believe it transmitted.
Wow.
It, yeah. Although I've never tried one, so I don't know. But yeah, they are quality.
It was a great looking thing.
Well, it looked like a giant DX7, didn't it? It had all the styling.
I think it had the membrane buttons on it as well, didn't it?
Yeah. I still keep an eye out for one of those, but they're as rare as hen's teeth. So there we go.
It had Poly Aftertouch. That's.
I'm only going on what I'm pretty sure it does. I might be wrong, but. Anyway, so
does anybody in the room know?
Yeah, if anybody does know that, just let us know. Because I can't. I'm just doing so many things here at once. I'm losing the will to live with this. Because my browser over here it played up earlier, and I think I might have even said something that sounded like SRIFT Siri. I can't say the word because it will just invoke
right,
all
yeah,
hell. Because every device in my room will go, how can I help?
You can say it though.
Yeah. So let's find out a little bit more about our guest today, Sean. So those of you who are aware of Sean's work, he's doing some great stuff online. There's plenty to discuss with him in terms of what he does in the music technology realm. This is we're gonna play this and be damned, okay? Because if YouTube's algorithm does this for this, well, who cares? We'll play a little snip of this for you. But Sean has done a fantastic cover version of Axel F, Harold Faltermeyer's Axel F, and now it's not, it's buffering to hell. So as you can see, we're just getting nothing at the moment, which might be the YouTube gods telling me don't do that.
Even if you don't know,
no, with the adverts.
You don't know anything about music theory like me. This is perfect for you.
You don't know anything about music theory, so we're just going to skip through you. Are you going to play now? Let's skip that. Oh no! Here we go. At last. I just love this piece of music, and you've done a fantastic job, I have to say. It's really, really good. So just to let people know what you used on that, let's bring it back. Here it goes. So you're using a Ball Around the River for the lead part, a Sequential Pro 3 for the bass, a montage, the FM aspects of the montage for the miscellaneous synthesizers, and Ali James he's called it something else now, hasn't he? Because he got into trouble with Roger Lynn. But yeah, there's
I think maybe it's...
VProm or something, which used to be V-Lin. So anyway, it's I'm so tempted to buy that.
Oh, it's really great.
Yeah, I hear so many good things about it. So, but anyway, that's one of the number of cover versions you've done on your channel and nailed them one and all. Here's another one for you. Let's see if we can manage to avoid adverts in this one. And this is Night on Bald Mountain, Zorgsky. I think we might need to just raise the volume. Again, featuring the Ball Around the River, Modal 002, OB8s, and much more. Pretty spectacular stuff. So that's a little bit of what Sean's putting out there, but of course he's also got various different entities. New Age composer. He's also has a company called Jazz Acoustics, which we'll talk about as well. Lots of different things there. So, Sean, I think Cryss has probably got a whole bunch of stuff lined up for you, but I'll kick this off and then hand over to him to kind of interrogate you further. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do, your involvement in music and music technology. What's your CV or your resume?
Okay, let's see. I started playing in the mid-'80s when I was a teenager. After the military, joined a band and went overseas, Hong Kong, Bangkok, Singapore, and was a keyboard player in a cover band. Got back, started getting involved in doing background music for, I was doing Oprah Winfrey show and a lot of was in a group with several dozen composers and just doing a lot of music for various television shows. And then done new age music, synthesizers, but with a lot of, I had score out for small orchestras and choirs, and I've done pretty well with that. It's played the music for those last two albums I did have been played all over the world in satellite radio, and in fact, one song I did, which was just a string quartet, actually paid for every single one of these synthesizers. Wow. Royalties I've made from that one piece. So there is still money to be made in writing music.
That's that one thing I think we all yearn to do is create that one piece of music that just pays all the bills, and then we can just kick back and maybe do
for that piece. I thought it was just a filler, and I made the most amount of money off that one piece of anything else. So go figure.
That's cool. Cool. Well done.
Then we've just been working on an independent film, like I mentioned earlier, and building up the YouTube channel. Just doing a lot of covers and a lot of classical music with synthesizers. Trying to build it up so then I can start putting a little more of my original songs, once I get a bigger, subscriber count. And pretty much me in a nutshell.
Excellent. Cryss.
Yeah. What first attracted you to the synthesizer? You said you had started playing in the 80s.
Yeah.
What was that spark that got you going on it?
Well, my uncle is a very talented pianist. He actually used to play with the Jordanaires, Elvis Presley's band. Just very talented. I had an extra neighbor who had a little $300 Casio keyboard with the little mini keys, and first time I heard it, I was just like, wow. And my uncle happened to be visiting and started playing on it, and I still have a photograph. I'll have to find it. I am just this 13, 14-year-old kid just mesmerized, in shock. And right when he started playing that, I knew right then that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So it was immediate. And then I ended up buying, the little Casio and Yamaha keyboards. My first real keyboard synthesizer was I can't remember which one I bought first. I had two of them, a Poly 61 by Korg and then a Casio CZ 101.
Yeah.
Back in the day. And I think when I got the Korg M1, that was the game changer for me in 1989. $3,000 when I was making $6 an hour customers in Southern California for a living. Scary job. And gotten a lot of debt. But that keyboard, oh my God, it changed my life. I was able to write, full compositions with that thing. And I've been doing it ever since.
So, who has been some of your influences on your playing and in your music?
Oh, probably the largest, the biggest would be Vangelis, Tangerine Dream, huge. Jean-Michel Jarre, Ray Lynch. I don't know. He's doing new age music. Celestial Popcorn, huge influence on me. Art of Noise, huge. I used to dream of having a Fairlight. Throughout the mid to late 80s, I just dreamed, man, what I could do if I had a Fairlight. And then one day I realized they got past the Fairlight and started using keyboards that I owned. And I was like, wow, I guess I don't have to dream anymore. I have, big boys are using.
Robbie, how many Fairlights do you have there at the house right now?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Wow. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, back in the day,
they're not. I will hasten to add that they're not mine. They are ones that me and a colleague have bought and that we restore, and then sell on to new owners. So if you're in the market for one, although you will probably be disappointed. I mean, they're great machines. Don't get me wrong, but as you said, quite rightly said, everyone was using one, to start with, and then all these other companies caught up and were doing, various aspects of what the Fairlight could do for a lot less money.
EMU.
Yeah, exactly. EMU, Akai, they all came along, and you could then buy, things like Ensonics at, a tenth of the price, if not more. Yeah. And you had, then you just hook that up to an Atari ST or an Amiga or something, and you
had an Emacs with my Atari ST.
Yeah, exactly, and that was it. You had everything that a Fairlight could do, pretty much. You just didn't have the fancy, bells and whistles. But they're still, relevant today. I have to say that because we ship them out. But anyway, yeah.
Native Yes in the chat room asks, what era of Tangerine Dream? The new age, like Hasslinger era or earlier?
Yeah, I didn't really get into the real early stuff. It sounds cool, but I like more structure in my music. Not really into the fart noises and too much of the experimental. I like to hear chords and a melody. So probably the I think it was the what was the album called with the dolphins? Oh my gosh. Anyway, it was Underwater Sunlight was the album. That's when I really started noticing them. I think late 70s.
Hmm. Who is inspiring you these days? I mean, imagine those bands still inspire you, but more recent artists, is there anything that you're particularly interested in?
God, it's sad to say. Maybe I'm just getting old, but I haven't really. I mean, I'm more into movie music now. Is huge. You know, I love. Of course, I love all the orchestrals. You know, like the John Williams and everything. But Hans Zimmer, really love all that mixture of synth and orchestral. I'd say he's probably one of the more modern that I pay attention to. But there's not a lot of people that are at least very popular that I hear doing a lot of synth music. I mean, there's so much talent out there, but you got to find them.
But it seems like it's happening more not in the mainstream, because that was one of my frustrations in that as I started getting into it, I was like, there's not really a whole lot to listen to if you're not into, techno or house or, any of the EDM styles. What do you listen to? But now, I'm finding a lot more music like on Bandcamp or through YouTube. I mean, your music, Electro 80s with Ben, or just like completely space, Lisa Belladonna. People that haven't made it into the mainstream but are making really good music. We've got more questions. I want to make sure I'm going to kick back here. Ben, Robbie, anything you want to add in here?
Yeah, I've got a quick one. Based basically on your Axel F cover, and then I kind of dug in and saw he did the Airwolf thing as well. And we're clearly probably similar age.
51.
50 this year. So same era and same inspirations. Was there a particular reason you chose to do, say, for example, Axel F? Is that dear to your heart and for a specific reason?
I do covers of music that I love. A lot of course 80s stuff. Just things that inspired me, or inspire me when I hear them. It's fun to cover. Plus, I know, especially when I do classical covers, you learn so much. Or even doing Axel F, for example. I've heard the song a million times, but until you cover it, you hear all these little details that, oh, wow, I didn't notice that, or the slight changes, or, oh, he did that second pass that I thought was the same thing, but he added to it, and I love that. You learn every time you do a cover piece.
And that kick drum pattern that he uses is just like, oh, hang on a minute, that's slightly different again.
Yeah,
it's so good. But so one of the other reasons is that I love that song so much, and that your cover version kind of sent me back to when was it? 1984, I think. That had just been released. And I was at high school, and we used to have a 2-week arts festival in the kind of the springtime, where all the kids would be involved in doing artistic endeavors of some description, and I just gravitated to the music. And we'd got a Korg 700S in the school, and that was the one and only synthesizer that I'd ever come across. Obviously monophonic, so you couldn't do chords or anything. But because I loved Axel F, I learned to play that. I learned to play that on there and get it sound pretty authentic. So one day our form tutor comes up to us and says, we need to have an entry into the music competition. Hands up anyone who wants to do that. So I, yeah, please, sir, me, sir. So he said, what are you going to do? I said, I'll do a cover version of Axel F. And didn't think about how I would do this, knowing that it's a pretty, as you said, it's kind of a complex piece of music. And in the end, all I could summon up in terms of gear was a Korg 700S and one of these things, a Bontempi organ, which I don't know if you're familiar with in the US. These are Italian keyboards.
Yeah, I had a Bontempi.
Oh, there you go. So you know what it is? It's a wind pump that blows through, plastic reeds, I think it is. And I'll just play this little snippet here. So you have these major and minor chord buttons, and I'd figured out the pattern to Axel F. So I was, with my left hand, I was kind of playing the chords with this Bontempi, and then the lead line on this Korg 700S, and I just have. I think back now, I think, God, that was just awful, utterly awful. And then I saw Harold Faltermeyer on Top of the Pops, which is the big weekly pop show back then, and he was stood in that classic square of keyboards, and he'd got a Fairlight, and I was like, oh, that's the one. He must be using a Fairlight. It was way later than that I realised that there's no Fairlight on that whatsoever. It's all all analog, apart from the DX7. Yeah. But everything else is proper old school analog. And Harold Faltermeyer is known for being a big lover of analog, and so it was it was kind of like an education in how not to perform a piece of music and not to believe everything you see on TV.
Yeah, they almost rejected its score for that, actually. When they first heard it, they were like, and thank God they with it. Cause
it's a great score, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of the signature movie pieces in the 80s.
Well, it's funny because I watched that video, your video yesterday. I thought, this is really, really good. It's just like, I mean, you really have to listen to know that it's not the real thing, and it's very difficult to tell. And I thought, I'm going to go and watch Beverly Hills Cop. And I don't have it on disc, so I thought, it must be on one of the streaming services. No one's carrying Beverly Hills Cop on any of the streaming services unless you have to pay for it individually. I'm just too tight. So I'm going to buy the Blu-ray tomorrow, I think, and then sit down and watch all three.
Great movie.
Yeah, fantastic stuff.
Fun to listen to those old 80s soundtracks. I went and listened to, was talking with Dan, who's Sonic Neutronic.
Yeah.
And he's really big into the old sequential sound and the John Carpenter movies, and a lot of his music's that kind of dark ambient. And so we've been talking, I've been working on the Prophet 6, so like the other evening I was sitting with the wife, like, what are we going to watch? Like, hey, let's watch Escape from New York.
I just watched that last night. Actually, during my bout of insomnia.
That's a soundtrack.
Very good.
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit disappointing to get to Escape from LA because the sound had changed so much by the 90s when the second one was done that it's like, it's kind of lost its vibe.
But that's the thing with movie soundtracks in the 80s, that, those early ones, those early John Carpenters and, the first Terminator, all of those things were done, heavily on analog synth. But it was only like a year or two later when the sequels come out, and then we've got Fairlights and emulators and synclaviers, and the whole thing just changed. And so you can have, like you say, a series of movies where the first one is deeply kind of analog, and the next one is massively sample based.
Do you agree that the analog ones have maybe aged better than the digital ones? I think when I think of things like The Thing, say, that's got like analog drones in it, and it's very sparse, and there's not much going on, but that still sounds great now compared to something that was like had native dance on it or something. And it seems the more complex they are as well.
I mean, Vangelis's Blade Runner is a touchstone, isn't it? It's it's kind of the benchmark, and that was all analog synth. It was hugely CS80.
The new Blade Runner, which is a great movie, but and Hans Zimmer did a great job, or Hans Zimmer and somebody else, they did a great job on it, but it just didn't. You don't get finished with the movie and have that feeling with Blade Runner. I'll watch the movie, the original Blade Runner, just so I can hear that music with the visual.
Yeah.
Well,
to be fair, Blade Runner did have an emulator in there. I can't remember if it was the 1 or the 2. There's a famous patch on one of the libraries, and when they're in the bar when he's about to go and meet the snake I forget her name now.
Oh, yeah.
There's this kind of reggae thing in the background, and it's just this constant loop that's out of the emulator library. So there was some emulator in there. I think OMD used it on Junk Culture as well. So yeah, little known fact.
I wonder how much of this is influenced just by how much we've listened to it, because one of the tracks that you had done, Sean, was Airwolf, and my goodness, that's the sound of my younger days.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I watched Airwolf and Knight Rider as a kid, but I'm in my 40s, a little bit younger than you guys, but
Shut up.
That's
Lucky.
what did you say?
Nothing. Nothing, you young child, you young whippersnapper.
Had to get that one in, didn't he?
I'm gonna have to check that out on replay. But could I come to something like Airwolf objectively? Because I've heard those sounds so many times that would I be able to say, oh, this sounds dated, or this really still sounds great? I don't know. It still sounds great to me.
I've had that same experience, but I've come back years later, and there will be things that I'm like, yeah, why did I like that? But there are a ton of things that no matter how many years pass, it just sounds incredible. And I don't think it's necessarily wholly an emotional, have an emotional feeling, because again, I've come back on things that I liked, and suddenly I'm like, wow, what was I thinking? That's really kind of cheesy now. So I think when something sounds good, it just sounds good for forever. I'm
just thinking, like, probably where I would experience that, thinking about, say, Pink Floyd's discography, something like Dark Side of the Moon, or I Wish You Were Here Over There.
I Wish You Were Here Over There.
Over there, yes.
Yeah.
Right over there. But they, or The Wall, they're really great sounding albums, and then you get something like Momentary Lapse of Reason, and it sounds very dated, and it's late 80s, and it kind of had like, oh, I can tell when that came from. Where Dark Side of the Moon, it's a little more atemporal, and like you couldn't really put a year on, like, when did this album come out.
Sometimes I've appreciated things of old that when I was younger, I liked it, but once I got older and you hear, not to bash any of the new keyboards, I got plenty of new stuff, but there's just something with the sounds of some of that older equipment, the imperfection of the computer processors and the chips. I don't know, but I'll listen to it and I'm like, wow, I didn't realize how well done that was, or how good those synths sound in there. And so I don't know, it's that imperfection of that old gear, which I think just makes it special.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for imperfection.
Yeah,
for sure.
Perfectly imperfect.
Yes,
my wife likes to say.
It's what gets me about people that compare modern versions of old synths, and they say, oh, it doesn't sound like, this doesn't sound like the thing that it's supposed to be cloning from 40 years ago. Well, sorry, but no two versions of that instrument 40 years ago sounded quite the same, so because they were all perfectly imperfect. So there you go. Right, Ben, have you got any questions for our guest, or are you just going to sit there and just twiddle your thumbs?
I keep reading the chat here.
Oh, he's on chat duty.
I'm on chat duty, yeah. But I did have some questions, because I wondered, didn't you say that you'd recently bought an OB8?
OB8, yeah. I bought an OB8 and a Trident in the same month, I think in February or March.
Right. Has that always been a keyboard that you've longed for, or I tried it? But both of those are like gorgeous machines.
It was an OBXA. That was one of the very first songs I learned how to play, the cool songs that, people would be like, oh my God, you could play Jump. So that's always been on my mind. And the OB8, from what I understand, is a little more dependable. So I did that instead of the OBXA. Yeah. Pretty much the same sound, except for a little less low end. But I'll be doing the conversion to make it sound a little more like an OBXA in that low end pretty soon.
All right. Okay. And the river that's in front of you there, what possessed that purchase? I mean, it's amazing.
The river.
What possessed you to buy the river in particular? Because I think it's an amazing synth myself.
Yeah. Well, right when I returned the Moog One, because the fan noise, I had, money burning a hole in my pocket, and I heard the demos for it, and I was just like, what the hell, I'll take a chance. It was a new company. And Ben, I don't know if some of the people who know me on the Gear Sluts forum, I bought a black one originally. But I bought it secondhand. The guy had needed some money. He had just got it and sent it, and he used it for a couple of days, and I bought it from him, but it got damaged in shipping. So Baloran has just been fantastic. We replaced a few things, that was damaged, and I kept having an issue. So he said, you know what, send it back to me. I'm going to get you a brand new one. He liked the demos I was doing for it, I guess, and he was so generous to get me a brand new one after a year of having the other one. So I decided to go for the white one, and I just love it. It's my absolute, that in the 002, my two favorite synths I will never part with.
Right. So you much, apart from the fan noise, you prefer that sound over the Moog One sound?
Yeah, well, because I got what I was a little disappointed. I talked to Cryss about it. Like I said, I love the Moog One. But at the time, I also had the same Sub 37. When you love something, it finds its way back to you. Luckily, the same guy who had it sold it back. But I got rid of it to help fund the Moog One, and I was disappointed that I couldn't get a lot of those sounds from the Sub 37 on the Moog One. So once I got the Sub 37 back, I figured I had the Moog covered, and the river has, I believe it was it was also based on the Moog. What was
Source, right?
Yeah.
Moog's.
Yeah, I forgot. It was one of their early synths. Anyway, but it's got 8 of those cards in it. So I feel like between the river and the subsequent 37, I've got Moog covered. I got that sound. But this thing is just, the river is just such a joy to play. I love the angle of the interface.
Yeah.
It looks beautiful. I had my carpenter friend build me some custom zebra wood ends on it, which I think look real sharp. I love the keyboard. It's got such a great feel on the Fitar, whatever one they used. I don't know. I love it. It speaks to me. Passionate when I love something. And the looks, too. Looks are very important to me. Aesthetics, as you can see by the room.
Yeah.
I've bought instruments just for the looks without even hearing them. I don't know, it inspires when you, my wife and I are both artists, and we're both, we've always believed that you truly become inspired when you're around things that are beautiful.
Yeah, I think you're right,
Yeah, I've taken things that sound average, and I think when you're inspired, you can make them sound beautiful.
Yeah. My wife's, my partner, rather, prompted things a bit there. She's always inspired with being around me.
Oh, you're so modest.
I would love one of those. I think I might try and save up and get one of those. I haven't got the room for it, but if they did a rack-mounted one, I'd definitely have it.
Cool.
I think a lot of people have been asking for that. We'll see what he ends up doing.
Yeah,
I think he was talking about it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. If anybody that's watching and is in the chat room and wants to put a question to our guest Sean, please do put it in there, and just make sure you put maybe question for Sean or something in, so we can just pick those. Just help us, because we see the stuff streaming by, and if we pick those out, we can throw those at Sean a little bit later in the show. But for now, thanks ever so much for all of that, Sean. Great to kind of learn more about you, but we'll come back, of course. We don't go away. Let's go on. You mentioned the Oberheim, so let's talk about this, because there seems to have been a glut of Oberheim emulations, shall we say.
Yep.
And Synapse have just released one called the Synapse Obsession. And it's the first thing that made me like this, which I'm very close to buying, was the fact that the demo did not include any Van Halen or Prince or anything like that, because that's so cliched.
It's a Synth. It's an Oberheim. Come on.
Yeah. So, Synapse have done this thing. It's £79. I guess I don't know if it's the same in dollars and euros, but it looks like an amazing realization and an expansion of the thing that inspired it. So yeah, guys, has anybody managed to pick this one up, or got any thoughts on this one?
I have their older one, which is the other emulation they did.
Let's find out.
Oh my gosh, they emulate.
The Legend.
I think a Moog.
Yeah, the
anyway,
Legend.
And that great company. That stuff is killer.
Yeah, and very, very affordable as
Dune,
well.
of course, sounds great.
Yeah, some really good stuff there. I think I've got one of their rack extensions for Reason. I think it's Antidote, and it is very good stuff. Very good stuff indeed. Ben, Cryss, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I like this a lot better than the recent Arturia. What was it? The
OBXA or something.
And I did appreciate. I like the classics too, but I did appreciate the demo of this Synapse synth, the Obsession. Just thought it was really tastefully done. Seems like it sounds good. I think probably at some point we'll want to hear like some vintage sounds done with it as well. I have this Sonic Projects OPX.
Yeah,
Pro
I have that one too.
Yeah.
That is fantastic.
And it sounds good. It sounds really good. The interface needs to be overhauled.
Needs to be updated.
Sure.
Yeah.
Especially the presets in there. And so that's kind of sometimes a little bit annoying to use, but the sound on it is really good. And then I have an OB6, so when it comes to something like this, like I don't need it because I've got a really great soft synth and a great hardware, analog that covers that sound. But it sounds good, and like they made it, the price pretty reasonable. I think it was $99 US. So I don't know. It's tempting.
Mm. Yeah, the one that I've kind of gone to, because I am a cheapskate, is the OBXD, which I've got nothing to compare it to.
Sounds
really.
great too.
But it's a really good free version. It's skinnable, and God knows what that advert is at the bottom there. But OBXD, that's kind of good. And of course, there's the IK Multimedia sample based OXA, I think it's called, which is nice. But this, what really impressed me about the Synapse one was the fact that the demo of it wasn't cliched and had some tones in there that I thought, really, that's new, that's different, and they've kind of gone beyond it. So it can do I'm guessing it can do pretty much everything the hardware that it's based on can do, and then some. For example, this LFO sequencer as well. Is that something? I'm not massively au fait with the Oberheims, but I'm guessing that's not a thing on the original hardware.
Not that I'm aware of.
No. So
BA.
yeah, so that's an interesting. That looks very UVI like. They do these kind of step sequences for LFOs in a lot of their stuff. But yeah, that looks like a really, really interesting. And for I think 79 of your English pounds. I don't know what it is in dollars and that, but I'm sure it's probably the same.
99.
99.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that's cool. So that's another. There's this. Who's going to come up with another Oberheim emulation at some point soon?
Wasn't Barrett working on working on an Oberheim.
Who, sorry?
Behringer.
Behringer, yes. Yeah, that's supposedly the UBXA. Although I'm sure that will change in terms of name at some point. It's just a shame that Mr. Oberheim, now he's got his name back, is probably past his glory days and probably can't really do much about anything and come up with anything. I mean, I know he's working with Dave Smith, isn't he? So
yeah, well, that was a nice thing is if he can get somebody else to manufacture them, that if he could still be designing. I mean, what is he in his 80s now?
Yeah.
Late 70s, 80s, something like that. So, yeah, if he could get something into production, somebody to handle that stuff, I would love to see him come out with some sim stuff again.
Yeah.
2-voice, 4-voice. He had advertised a Eurorack version, but I don't think that ever came to fruition. And then at the end of last year, he was teasing a polysynth, but I don't think we've seen anything about that yet.
Yeah, I think we need a poly analog, a decent, affordable poly analog. So I don't know where it's going to come from, but there you go. And so let's segue slightly because famous user of Oberheim's was Prince. Let's move on to this topic now. We talked about this last week. So there's a guy who used to work for Prince who managed to pick up a couple of bits of gear. One was a DX7, another one was an Emax 2. And the story behind his acquisition is quite interesting. I didn't realise this until after we did the show last week. That at the time that he was working, which was at Paisley Park, so in the mid-90s, Prince was in that whole spat with Warner Brothers and writing Slave on his face and all this. And he wanted to put out the Gold Experience album. Warner's were very reticent about doing it, and eventually, he kind of got the album out in one shape or form. And I remember at the time going to see Prince on the Gold Experience tour, which was a real kind of whistle-stop world tour. Apparently, because Warner's wouldn't fund this or entertain this project in any way, he had to raise his own funds. And some of the ways that he did that was to sell off old gear. Hence, Shane picked up the DX7 and the Emax 2, and there were other things that went out to various other people. So anyway, this went on with an estimate of $25,000 US. When we were looking at it last week, it had, I don't know if it just started, but for a few days it was hovering around the few thousands. And I thought, this isn't going to make that estimate. Nobody's going to pay $25,000 for whatever it might be. Forget what synth it is. The fact that it's a Prince synth and was used on Purple Rain. It sold for a whopping $73,697.50. That includes the buyer's premium. And the Emax 2 sold for £9,151.25. So they both went for a heck of a lot of money. Has somebody got a bargain there? What do you think?
Well, it's a ridiculous amount of money, that, isn't it? It's just... And at the end of the day, it's still a DX7.
Yeah.
It's...
But he didn't sign it. Maybe that would have been...
Well, you'd have to wonder whether the person's going to take all that tape off it.
Yeah.
And try and restore it somehow. No, I don't think you could.
No.
What made me laugh about the Emax was that it was like loaded full of samples, but they were created post.
They were lifted from
so
master
they were taken.
tracks,
They were taken from the master tracks, which. So what?
Yeah.
That.
But somebody.
But it's weird that you can get so much money for something just because it's belonged to somebody.
I mean,
so effective.
That DX7. Prince was apparently, according to people like Susan Rogers and Wendy and Lisa, who were working with him in the studio at the time, he wasn't a programmer. He just used the presets. He was very much a preset guy. And so even if he had created any sounds on that DX7, considering that he bought it brand new in '83, it would, I mean, having been used as much as it has been used, because it was labelled up. There was one of the labels on the back had Fink main, so it was clearly used by Matt Fink on stage as well. The internal battery will have died at least once since '83. So unless they've backed anything up, anything that's on there is not going to be, a Prince patch. It's not going to be something he sat down and lovingly crafted. It's just going to be a set of pieces, masking tape with certain, song names on underneath the patches that you need to select. Other than that, the value is not the instrument itself. It's not because it's a DX7. It is because it belonged to Prince,
bragging rights.
One of the greatest musicians ever to have walked this earth. It was used on Purple Rain, and from what I can tell, also used on Around the World in a Day. It was used on the Purple Rain tour. These are not just any old concerts. That's not just any old film, and it's not just any old artist. This is a seminal artist who will go down in the passages of history as big as any other musician that has ever existed. And I don't think I'm understating that at all. This is Prince, and that's why I think this sold for $74,000. Not the fact it's a DX7. You can, you love the DX7 or you hate the DX7. Doesn't matter. It could have been a stylophone. A stylophone would have probably gone for much the same if it had been used on Purple Rain. So imagine how much you'd get for Bowie's stylophone that was used on Space Odyssey.
I was thinking of, yeah.
No, but imagine how much that would sell for. Space Odyssey is one of the the greatest songs that he ever wrote, and it famously uses this cheap toy. And if somebody said, "Here, this is Bowie's stylophone. This is the one from Space Odyssey," it would sell for six figures and above.
I am completely 100% with you, Robbie, on this, and I was actually quite surprised by the discussion that was happening in our Facebook group about this, because if this were a guitar or bass forum, that discussion would not have happened, because it just assumed and maybe it has something to do with when you think of a famous synthesist or keyboardist and their instrument, he played a CS80 or he played an Oberheim OBXA, but when you think about maybe more in McCartney's Hofner, his Rickenbacker, or Jimmy Page's Les Paul, or Eddie Van Halen's Frankenstein. It's a very specific instrument that's identified them with them. And even with Prince, I mean, I don't remember what brand it was, but it was a Telecaster copy that
it was a Hohner, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then his cloud guitar, and then the cymbal one. Those I'm sure the guitars would sell for many times what this DX7 sold for, but it just wouldn't be, the kind of response to it, it's just a DX7, that wouldn't have happened. It's just a 4001 or a Hofner. No, that would have never even been a discussion. And of course, some people like us, I mean, I can't afford. I wouldn't spend that money on Prince's stuff. But I wouldn't spend that much money on Jimmy Page's stuff either, or Jimi Hendrix. I just wouldn't be, the value wouldn't be there for me. But now, let's say have hundreds of millions of dollars, or I'm a billionaire.
Then you would, yeah.
Would I? Oh, hell yeah, I would. Yeah. If I could buy Jimmy Page's #1 Les Paul, I'd have it in a second. Or if I could buy Angelus CS80, one of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's the relativity in all of this. Yep. But, just to bring it back around again, I think that's what's kind of missing out of the conversation that you have brought up, Robbie, that, there's value of a different sort. The instrument in itself is just the instrument. It's the history that goes along with it.
It's what it represents in history. I mean, there's some interesting comments going through on the chat room. Asia Head saying, I love Bowie, but I wouldn't pay anything for his gear, and that's fine. That you don't. It doesn't lessen your love of an artist if you refuse to pay thousands and thousands of dollars or whatever. But I've had instruments through here, particularly Fairlights, that the Fairlight was an instrument that back in the day, mostly only the rich and famous could buy. So most of them have got a history that you can trace back to, a well-known individual. And when we sold, we brokered the sale for Boris Blank's, or one of Boris Blank's Fairlights. And Boris Blank, Yellow, they're not Prince level in terms of fame and influence and that, but they are still highly regarded. The very fact that it was his added at least $5,000 onto the price. Now that's not this territory, but it's still because of who used it, where it was used, and what it was used on. That it just adds to the value. And the bottom line is something is only worth what somebody else will pay for it. And if somebody else will pay $75,000 for Prince's DX7, then that is worth $75,000 because somebody's paid for it. Simple as that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Fender has done some like really high-end reissues. I mean, they've got the regular stuff that's coming out that's mass-produced, but they took Eddie Van Halen's Frankenstein. That's the red, black, and white striped guitar that he's famous for from the early albums. $25,000 for a copy that has every nick, every little modification that he had, the exact wear marks on it. That's $25,000, and that's not even his guitar. Yeah. That's just his
a replica. Yeah.
I mean, there are some examples of instruments out there that like you say, have probably never been in the same room as the person that it's linked to, or maybe somebody just said, we've done a production run of a copy of your guitar. Here is one. Just put your signature on the back, and we'll lacquer over it, and we'll sell it, and it will sell for 10 times as much as the regular one because it's got his signature or her signature on it. But I think when it comes, again, I'm coming back to this thing that Purple Rain and Prince, they are just milestones, massive milestones in cultural history, music history, global history. I mean, there's just so much you could, they're just so important, and it's not like, I'm just plucking names out of the air. Depeche Mode, Alan Wilder sold his Emax 2s and other bits and bobs, and they fetched a few $1,000s. And Depeche Mode are one of the biggest bands in the world and have done their fair share to advance music technology and its use in popular music. But they ain't Prince. They ain't Prince. Prince is up there with Elvis, with Bowie, with the Beatles, with the Stones, And the artifacts that those people have made available for sale or have come up for sale, they sell for similar amounts. And forget the fact that it's a DX7. That just doesn't come into the equation. It's who used it, where it was used, and how it was used. And there you go.
Great conversation piece.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you imagine that? If I had the money, it would be in a case, a hermetically sealed case, and it would be purple velvet lined with gold writing, and it would have a picture of. And it would just sit on the wall, and I would be happy to have paid $75,000. If I had $75,000, I would be more than happy to have done that. And then maybe loan it to a museum. Loan it to a museum. Let it get used for information and education as well. But
Van Halen did to one of his early guitars. Actually, I think it's in the Smithsonian.
Yeah, and there are things like Adamant's costumes. I mean, again. For those of us like myself and Sean and Ben who were around in the early 80s when Adamant was just everything and everywhere, his costumes are in the Victoria and Albert Museum in London because they were iconic moments in popular music. So welcome back, Ben.
Same thing. It's like with the Peter Green Les Paul, because here it's an iconic late 50s. PAF loaded Les Paul. Like the guitar itself, without anything attached to it, is worth a lot of money, probably, into the hundreds of thousands. Then it has a history with Peter Green. Then it changed some hands, and it also ended up with Gary Moore for quite a while, who played the heck out of it, and now Kirk Hammett of Metallica owns it, and he's using it and playing it regularly. And it almost, when I hear about that, a little bit me like cringes a little bit, like, oh, this should be put in a museum, let people. And then when I think about it, like I kind of really appreciate that these other musicians have taken this iconic instrument and have kept making music with it.
Yeah.
And I really like the idea of that the more that I think about it.
Simon's just brought up a point in here. He said, I wonder what one of Prince's LM1s would be worth. And it made me think, because, the LM1 is an iconic drum machine, and what he was doing with it was
early work.
Yeah. I mean, his tuning of a lot of those samples, people just won't think,
Right. That was just tuning one of the percussion instruments in there that I thought was so special, that sound in the When Doves Cry, and it was actually just tuned it down, I think, an octave, one of the basic percussion sounds in there.
Yeah, it was the
imagine if it still had the patterns in there.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But it's not so much, again, if you look on eBay or wherever and you find an LM1, what's the going rate for, if it was just owned by Mr. Joe Average, was it 1,000, 2,000, 3,000? I don't know.
I think it's about 2, isn't it?
Yeah,
maybe. Like that.
Let's be conservative. Let's say it's $5,000, okay, for a used LM1 in good condition, and then you come along and you get Tears for Fears LM1, or one of their Lins is currently in the Behringer workshops and being worked on. Now that's Tears for Fears, and they used it to a degree. So maybe that one might be worth $8,000 because it's Tears for Fears. But then you get Prince's one. What's the price going to be on that? It's the same LM1, but it's Prince's LM1. And because of what he did with it and where it was used, that's why it's so much, in my opinion. So I think we've overdone that one. Anyway, let's move on. Let's see what else we've got. So let's talk about sampling, because that's something that's very dear to my heart, and we always seem to talk about Spitfire Audio on this show, and with very good reason, because they do some good stuff. And Music Day, or Make Music Day 2020, and I don't know which day it was it today, was it yesterday, or was it Friday, but they've done,
I think it wasn't it over the 3 days?
Yes, yeah.
So it was a 3-day event. Okay.
Videos released for 3 days.
So this was brilliant, because I got into sampling because of the things that you could make sampling do that was not like anything else. So smashing things, found sounds. To me, that was what sampling was all about. Even though we know through history that the whole reason that digital sampling exists is because Peter Vogel wanted to take a shortcut, and because what he was doing to try and make authentic sounds wasn't working. So he invented, or stumbled across this concept. So I've always been about that, using sampling as a way of creating new, previously unknown sounds. But history is, if you go back 40 years, sampling is mostly used for replicating and copying and simulating, shall we say. And Spitfire do a huge amount of stuff like that. But this was brilliant, because what they were telling you to do was to go out, get your iPhone or whatever phone it is that you have, record objects in your kitchen or in your backyard or in your garage or whatever, take those noises and make them into instruments that are completely and 100% unique to you. And they had this three-day event. So on Friday they showed you how to capture the sounds, on Saturday they showed you how to create instruments out of the sounds, and then today they were just kind of rounding up favourite contributions from those those people that had created such things. And you can find all of this on the Spitfire Audio website, this Make Noise feature. So guys, did you partake in this, or did this inspire you to get out there with a recorder and start making some sounds of your own? And what do you think of this as a whole, as a concept? Anyone?
Oh, I think it's a great idea. I enjoyed the videos, and I really appreciated that they walked through, I think it was Contact, and then the new Logic sampler. And I wasn't sure if they were going to use the latest one, but being that I'm a Logic user and I just got that upgrade, seeing how Christian Henson did that was pretty awesome. I think what I'm going to try is sampling a Moog mug with a Moog pencil and see how that'll work. But funny coincidences. I already told you about the first one. The second one this week was as I was watching some of those videos, and then I remember I had a conversation with Robbie about Christian Henson's little controllers. I'm like, I gotta look into those and see what it is. And then I went searching for it, and in my search, I found a video and somebody who had asked the same question. And where things in life get weird and the matrix is broken and all that is that it was some guy, Quantum 7, who had asked that same question. I'm like, Quantum 7?
Yeah, some people in the chat room are disputing my claim here about Peter Vogel inventing digital sampling. I will fight you all day long on that one. Because they're saying, the BBC Radiophonic Workshop was sampling. No, they were recording to tape. It was not known as sampling. Sampling wasn't a concept. Same with Stockhausen and Schaefer and all of those. It was tape recording. It was.
Sorry to cut you off for a second. I think the stream has stopped.
Yeah, I've just noticed that in there.
Oh no!
Don't know what's going on. No, because there's always a delay, unfortunately, isn't there? Video stream is paused. Not here, it's not.
Ooh.
So we're definitely... we're back, they're saying. Oh, there you go.
Ah.
That's odd. There you go, a little bit technology going wrong there. But anyway, we're back in the room. I don't think anybody missed much. We were just yammering on. Again, lots of people... Bell Labs had patents on digital sampling with core memory. But what did they do with it? Nothing. There was lots of... certainly, Peter Vogel didn't invent digital sampling. He invented a form of digital sampling that was made commercially available, and therefore was the first. Again, we can talk backwards and forwards. But what you're saying about that kind of joy of making your own instruments out of just anything that you can that can make a sound, whether it's a percussive thing or a chromatically musical thing, and it's just that joy of, because it does take work, it does take a lot of effort to put these things together to then make them really playable. As Christian was showing, 10 velocity layers, and then getting all the the splicing points, and if you're going to put in things like sustain loops as well, nowadays modern digital sampling, such as the sampler thing in Logic and various others, they can automate a lot of that stuff for you. I remember sitting down, doing, sampling an instrument every minor third across the entire keyboard, and then having to go into every single one of those samples and finding the crossover points to where it can, you get a decent sustain loop, but it's good. But then, if you're creating your own instrument from your own sound, you set the rules. And that's another liberating experience, that you say, well, actually, I want this to have a very short release or a very long release, or I want it to do X, Y, and Z. So, it is a joyously creative process, and I highly recommend.
Grand piano for Omnisphere for one of the samples.
Oh yeah,
I remember.
Yeah.
I talked to my wife about doing that with our grand piano, but she said no.
Well, you say. Another thing that Christian Henson is responsible for is Piano Book, which is this big community of people that go in and sample their own pianos and submit them as instruments, and then you can just sign up and download them for free. They're mostly in contact format, I believe. But again, these are people not just sampling old pianos that they've got that maybe are quite unique, but also sampling them in unique ways, where they're muffling the strings, or they may be doing it in a prepared fashion, a la John Cale. So some really interesting stuff that can be done there. Are you a heavy user of samplers at all, Sean?
That was pretty much early on. I had Kurzweil's, K2000 with a sampling option, and K2500 and K2600. I got into industrial music back in the 90s, and it was heavily sample based, doing like 9-inch nail type stuff. Really, and Art of Noise, of course.
Of course, yeah.
That kind of got me all started. I was just so into that band.
Yeah.
When someone asked it,
sampling, I lost interest.
Someone in the chat room, speaking of sampling capabilities, somebody in the chat room asked earlier if you had a V-synth or not. And if you didn't, this is to Sean.
Oh, to me?
Yeah, why not?
I actually had one and I sold it and I wish I didn't.
There's your answer then. I can't remember who asked the question now. But
No, I can't see it in there.
yeah, it was quite earlier on. I was like storing it, waiting for an opportunity.
Hey, one of the things regarding the Make Music Day is that the samples that Christian Henson makes live, which was with a wine glass, are available for download. I got to download them. I was just going to check it out. They're there to use and to try out, and I was going to try to do it with Sampler like he did it, so I could go through the steps, learn how to do it. And I think one of the things too is like when you have something like their Spitfire BBC and it's got 10 layers or whatever of velocities and samples, and you can get really complex with it. But one of the beautiful things about it with these samplers, and as I was checking out when the Logic update happened, I said, yeah, I don't know all that stuff. I haven't experimented with it before, but I know synthesis. So as I started, I can't remember what I had made a sample with. I don't know. I did something. I have a AKG 414 sitting around here. So I, clinked something and made some samples. I put it in there. Then I started messing with the envelopes. I mean, really, really simple stuff. Ran that into some Valhalla Supermassive, and all of a sudden there's just a really cool sound coming out, this huge, granular type pad, and it was one sample. I didn't multi-sample it. I didn't layer anything. It was just one single sample, and so one of the things. Yeah, I mean, one of the things to remember is you don't have to start with that crazy amount of technical ability with it. You can start sampling with just something really simple. I mean, starting an instrument and learning to play a C chord, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah. And
it can be, you can make some of those real simple things sound really great.
Yeah. And that was one of the reasons that the Fairlight was so unique in certainly the Series 1 and the Series 2, that multi-sampling at that time didn't exist. So you had one sample, that was it. And you stretched it across the whole keyboard. And that's when you start really getting the interesting stuff happening, because when you play something that was root note is middle C, and you stick it 2 or 3 octaves down, it's something completely different. It's not what you sampled.
Yeah, it's usually something evil sounding as well. I found.
Well, I've talked about this frequently, and you can go and watch Alex Ball's fantastic 20-minute Terminator 2 soundtrack documentary that he did. But the Terminator drone that is a brass fall sample from the Fairlight, pitched 3 octaves down.
Yeah. Remember the movie? Movie Ghost, the demons there. Those were babies.
Yeah,
babies crying, and they went down. It becomes Satan.
Yeah, and that's all you have to do.
I had an amazing Gestalt moment with the bell tree. I played it too low down, and I was working on a horror movie soundtrack at the time, and it was like, oh my god, this is what everybody uses.
Yeah.
This is what everybody uses.
But that's up a good point in that, to get some inspiration for what do you do with this, what do you sample, because a lot of these are just, they're found, they're mistakes, is to go and watch and see what people have done in the past. So the BBC Workshop, how they made the original Doctor Who soundtrack, things like that. There's so much inspiration to be had. Like, I didn't know I could do that. So soon, when I'm done working on the song that I'm working on, one of my goals was to use the Spitfire Labs to make a song, and so I've got it. But instead of using their percussion set, I use London Atmos, which doesn't really have any percussion, and I chop stuff up to make percussion out of London cityscape sounds. Mm-hmm. And it was a fun process, because that's not where I would have been working before. I would have just used drums. But it's like, I can do something different. I know people have done stuff like this, and same thing. Like I had listened to a lot of industrial in the early '90s, so it's like, yeah, I kind of remembered something. There was one of my favorite industrial bands had done with a sample of thunder, and he made a percussion loop out of it. It sounded amazing.
Well, that's what Peter Gabriel did on his fourth album, is that he recorded something, and when he pitched it down, he heard the rhythm that you couldn't normally hear at the regular pitch, and there was that rhythm, and that formed the part of I can't remember, I think it was Rhythm of the Night. And yeah, that formed that kind of that slow rhythmic loop, but it was completely unintentional. But I just held this up. This is the BBC Radiophonics Workshop Fairlight album called The Sound House, and this is where this was made shortly after they got their Fairlight, and there's something like 20 odd tracks on here that are pretty much all Fairlight CMI, which that's where the BBC Radiophonic Workshop, who were doing tape stuff before, they found this, and now they were doing it all digitally. So it's a very good album if you're into the Radiophonic Workshop and your sampling. So and they're a great source. Also, the BBC Sound Library, which was recently made, or some of it was recently made free of charge. What a great source! You don't even have to wander outside. If you don't like going outside to get your found sounds, here's a massive collection of found sounds for you to go for it. So yeah, there you go. So that's Make Music Day from Spitfire Audio. We're big fans of those. We don't make any bones about that. And I think every news. Did you want to talk about the Iridium anymore?
Well, here's a way to go about it. So, Sean, your username is Quantum7. Does that have anything to do with the Waldorf Quantum?
No.
So just something altogether different.
We're disappointed I didn't buy a Quantum. Quantum 7.
Are you interested in the new Waldorf Iridium?
I don't know enough about it. I've been so busy lately that like I said, I didn't even get a chance to. I didn't even hear about the supermassive reverb until just the other day when I watched Chris's videos. But now I'm going to be reading about that after this is over.
Yeah.
So
we discussed it last week, didn't we?
Yeah. Fortunately, it looks like the U.S. price is $29.99, which is going to eliminate a lot of people from buying it. So I've heard other people.
What is?
I've heard other people talk about it's going to be more expensive in the U.S. Yes, of course, just like Moog's going to be more expensive in Europe. But the thing is that the price is really close to the Kyra price in Europe. So why is there like a $700 difference in the price between the Kyra and the Iridium in the U.S.? That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Andrew Brooks in the chat room. Hello, Andrew. Good to see you. You're late, but we'll let you off. He's asking, what is the synthesizer to Sean's left on the lower tier? We know what it is, Sean, but you tell Andrew.
Oh, yeah. The Baloran the River.
One of the most cumbersome synthesizer names ever.
Yeah. There's about 50 in the world right now, or 60 in the world, made in France.
There you go. See, I always used to call it the Ballaran, but it's the Baloran. I don't know. I guess.
Yeah, I probably butcher everything. I don't know.
I'd call it Baloran as well.
But it's like Moog and Moog.
Yeah, Moog.
Yeah, but like Sean's calling it Moog, and he's American.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Well, here's another one of those cases. This is Rickenbacker, not Rickenbacker, like most people say it.
I just say Ricky.
Well, I figure for Moog, a cow says moo. They don't say.
Have you heard European cows? Moo.
Yeah.
There's that museum as well, isn't there? That can't be Moogseum. It doesn't sound right.
Well, apparently it is. One of my favourite typos when I'm doing stuff is when I'm trying to type Fairlight, I type fail right, and it couldn't be more apt. Dear oh dear. Anyway, so yeah, you go, Waldorf Iridium. Yeah, it's expensive, but units are already hitting users' studios. Literally, we spoke about this last week, that they went on sale the day they announced it, and people were buying.
There's quite a lot of demos online now. Yeah. They sound fantastic. They really do.
It does sound.
Those digital filters don't seem to have done any harm at all.
Really. We said last week, didn't we, that a lot of people were making, not complaints, but they were saying, "Oh, it hasn't got the analog filter, so I don't really know if I should go for it or not." And now people are saying, you know what, these digital filters aren't that bad. So, and we said last week that good digital filters do exist. Yeah. So
well, they're pretty good on the Hydra synths. Really, the filters are okay on there. Yeah. They like plenty of resonance.
And there's history of good, the EMUs and the EMAXs. Well, from the EMAX 2 onwards.
God, the EMU's got killer filters.
Yeah, and they're digital.
Yeah.
So there are such good things as good digital filters. Yeah. So there we go.
Absolutely.
So we'll have to wait and see if anybody gets one of those. I don't know if Simon's got one on order. I know he's been a busy lad. I'm not sure he was in the other side of the world yesterday or today. I don't know whether he's signing in from far-flung places or whether he's back. But I'm sure that's probably on his shopping list. I don't know if he's still in the chat room. Anyway, so we've kind of run the course here with our news articles. Did you want to mention this? Let's talk about it, because I know this is one that's close to Chris's heart, and I had this on my list of spare backups. So there's a video on YouTube by the Nutrix, the synth guy, and it's a kind of a 10-minute video about Roland ACB versus ABM and getting real answers from Roland. Now, I have to admit, I started to watch this and got interrupted and never got back to it. So, Cryss, knowing that you have a vested interest in this and are quite, you have a fairly solid and well-founded opinion, did you watch it? What did you think? Did you get any answers that you were looking for?
I'm glad this guy is doing this. It's solving some questions for us. It was interesting because they really kind of wound around the topic quite a bit. And one of my frustrations is that they're very much pushing Zen core technology over ACB, which I'm a big fan of the ACB. So basically what it came down to, like if you watch the whole video, there's 30 seconds where they actually talk about what is the difference. And it comes down to this. So the ACB and DCB, well, probably mainly the ACB synthesizer stuff. So that's what comes on the System 8, and that's the Legendary series and the Roland Cloud. The way that they build those is in modeling, they build it from the ground up like a virtual circuit. So the components are modeled, and then you build upon that until you have the entire synthesizer built virtually. So it's extremely accurate. And that's why I think the System 8 and the Roland Cloud Legendary series sound so good. Now, of course, that's going to take a lot of CPU. That's why the System 8 is only 8 voices and the Boutique are only 4. Now, there are other modelings, which I can't remember the hierarchy of all this, but they have the Zen Core and Zenology. And somewhere within all of that is what they're calling ABM, which is, I don't even remember what, something analog behavior modeling, I believe is what it's called. It's done differently. So it's not done from the individual part up. It's done kind of at the end. So they are modeling, here's a sweep of Jupiter 8, and the frequency it goes from one to the other. And they built a model that's much less CPU intensive. It basically does what the original stuff does, but of course within that it's not as accurate. So they've opted, and I think having both systems are good as long as they keep the ACB going. And I'm kind of concerned about it because they're pushing so hard. The people that they're paying to do synth reviews and play their, they've sent the Jupiter X's to, are pushing the Zen Core sounds really good. It sounds just like my whatever. And I'm like, it's just not sounding like that to me. I know Ben feels the same way, but there's a reason for that. And it is a good idea to have that because now they've got a multi-platform software. So say, for instance, you have one of their groove boxes. What's that latest one they came out with? I don't remember what the title of it is.
MC 101 was one of them, wasn't it?
Yeah. So if you have that, if you have their keytar, like what Mark Barnes has, the Axe, I can't remember what the name of it is, or you have the Jupiter XM, or you have the Jupiter X, you can take patches and transfer them between your devices. So your buddy made a great patch on the XM, you can transfer it to your 101 or your X. That's a cool idea. I just hope that they will continue doing the really accurate, very well modeled. I think when we talk about imperfections in synthesizers and the old synthesizers that we love, that's what I really hear in the ACB. Like, you get that drift and those little things that are happening where I'm not really hearing it in any of the Zen or ABM stuff. So, Axe Edges, like you said. That was my take on it. Ultimately, and if I make one more statement here, ultimately everything will be as good or better than ACB because as computer models get better, computer processors get better, you won't have to make those kind of compromises. This Zencore stuff is set in this time period because they want to put out something that's less expensive and that will work on a variety of machines, whether it be your computer or your Jupiter XM. But ultimately, we're going to get to the point here that it doesn't matter. Anything is going to be able to run ACB type stuff, that component modeling, without any problems. So, I don't know. That's where I'm with it. What do you guys have to say about it?
I don't necessarily have a huge amount of skin in the game. I like what they do, whether it's the Zencore stuff or whether it's the ACB stuff, because I don't have an investment in the hardware. But I can imagine that if I did, I would be feeling a lot closer to what you're feeling. I like what they're doing. I like all the stuff that they do. How they get there is not really an issue for me because I'm just using the cloud stuff. Sean, do you use Roland Cloud or anything like that?
Yes. Yeah, I had a System 8, and then I got rid of it to finance something else as usual, and now have the cloud subscription.
Yeah,
which I really love, especially I like the D50 is one of my favorites on there.
Yeah.
Waiting for a V-Synth. That would be great.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have said now that they've introduced this lifetime license on every instrument, everyone I've spoken to says, I think I'm going to go for the D50. That's like the first choice. And certainly when I get to the end of my first year's subscription, that's going to be the one that I decide to keep because I think out of all of them, it's great.
It's I actually compared it to a friend's D50, and I mean it is sounded pretty much the same. Maybe a little more low end than the real one, but I mean it was 99.9%.
It's pretty good,
it's very good.
One of the experiments I did was because I don't have a subscription right now, but when mine ended, I was in the Play 2 for Life, so one of them that I kept was the D50, and I checked it out versus the Zencore patches that reference. So I chose Fantasia as the experiment. So Fantasia on the D50, which is DCB, the Zencore, which use whatever, and then whatever the sample versions they have. Like, so they have the flavor and all the other ones.
Yeah.
And you would think with a digital synthesizer that they should all sound pretty much the same, but I found that the DCB version, the legendary D50 version of it, sounded the best by far.
Yeah, definitely. Did any of you guys? I mean, obviously, Cryss, you didn't because you're not a subscriber still. But there was some issues this week just gone with the whole system. So I remember I kept getting. They've updated the Roland Cloud Manager, and it seems to be better than it has been. But I'm still getting notifications to update stuff I don't have or haven't downloaded, like the voice expansion packs for the hardware. Now, I don't have any of that hardware, but I keep getting told that there's an update for it, and I haven't downloaded it. So there's that, but they had a 500 error for about half a day, where nobody could get in and do anything, and then they released a whole bunch of preset packs that wouldn't install. There was about half a dozen of them that wouldn't install for about half a day, and there was lots of people kicking off in various places. I don't know, because I wasn't in a position to fire up all of my any of my plugins to see if all my plugin functionality remained. I guess it probably did. I don't know what the licensing mechanism is behind the scenes, whether it's something that always has to. I don't think it always has to be on, but it updates itself every month or so. I don't know. But was anybody affected by that, or did that raise any concerns for anyone?
I find the software a little bit problematic as a whole. You know, I've been installing the full suite of everything today, which just took all day.
Yeah.
And sometimes the install button doesn't work.
Yeah.
And the only way of getting around that is actually doing a full reboot of the computer.
Yeah.
I've tried quitting the app, and it still didn't work.
It's a very
rebooting the computer seemed to get it to work.
Yeah, it's a very problematic application, and I think that if you are committing resource to a subscription model, that's basic stuff you've got to get right from the get-go.
Yeah.
So with the first problem that you had, what worked for me, because I still have it installed, and I still get updates and things like that. It was bugging me like every half an hour. Like, you have instruments to be installed. Like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
So I just uninstalled the manager, reinstalled it, and I haven't had those problems since.
No, see, I've done that. I've done that because I when I first got Cloud, which was 2 or 3 months ago, I was getting that all the time, and I thought, what the hell? So I raised a support ticket, and they came back, with the, like, have you tried turning it off and on again? Yep. And that's essentially what they're asking you to do. And I did that, and it did solve most of the problems. But then when they updated it again, the problems came back. And whilst we've been on air 2 or 3 times, I've had a notification. If I bring up my notifications, so I had one at, it seems to be at 10 to the hour. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's 9. Well, I mean, if I could show you my screen, my entire notification column on my Mac is Roland Cloud Manager telling me that I've got an update for EXZ001 Stage Piano 1, which I haven't downloaded because it's a hardware library, for the hardware synth. I haven't touched it. So I guess, I know I can turn notifications off if it bothers me that much, but it just shouldn't be doing it. And it seems a schoolboy error, and they need to get that right.
Have seen it, Robbie, but Sean Ote, the new rep from Roland Cloud, I don't know his exact title, but he was the one that came in asking questions that I would respond to.
Oh, yes, I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, so he had come as if everybody else hadn't seen it. He said, yeah, we're aware of all these problems. We're working on it. I mean, they've had years now, since back in 2018 at least. That's when I had started, of really buggy software. So
yeah, and he always ends his things with, "We will be, we will be better." Well, come on, when will you be better? You've had a chance.
Start off better.
Yeah.
Start off better.
At least they're communicating in some small way, and I got to hand it to him for that, because he came back and answered a whole list of my questions. So I appreciated that, and hopefully, I just hope that's a good sign for what's coming. Like, maybe they are going to invest a lot more into the infrastructure for Roland Cloud. Yeah,
because it's not Roland that are behind Roland Cloud, is it? It's another company that is doing all. So it's not like an in-house job. It's another company that's doing all of this, and so there is a disconnect, and unfortunately, it's rubbing off on the brand. So it's an odd one, but I'm sticking with them. I've given them a year subscription, so I've got to really. So
I
got some. Oh, sorry, Ben.
I was just going to say, I'm actually glad that somebody else other than Roland are doing it. I think it'd be even worse if Roland were doing it themselves at the minute.
And you have to wonder, was that an executive decision? Let's let these guys take care of it. We're not experts, and if they mess up, it's not our fault.
Yeah.
So the actual plugins themselves, like the Legendary series, have been really good. And so as much as I complain about them, I do really like them. And I contacted Roland Cloud support a couple of weeks ago and directly asked them. I said, hey, in 2018, I was on the Play 2 for Life. I stopped my subscription because there was no communication about whether I'd get to keep any of the synthesizers after that. And so I asked them, if I resubscribe now, will I continue on that? And they said yes. If you were on the Play 2 for Life, you'll restart getting 2 synthesizers each year of the top tier of I think that's the 199 tier of the cloud, up to 10 plugins. Okay. So I could go 4 years, grab 8 more if I wanted to have the subscription, and then I would be able to keep. And then plus after that, if you just wanted to buy any lifetime keys. So that was good news because they're very unclear and hadn't communicated about any of that stuff. So some other people now reported the same thing. Yeah. So I'm glad to hear that, and I may continue. I'm waiting to see if they come out with some more ACB stuff. I tell you what, if they came out with a JX8P, I would immediately subscribe.
Yeah, definitely.
Somebody was asking for a Juno 60 as well before in the chat.
It would be nice if they did some of the other Junos, JX8P.
Yeah.
The 60
MKS8,
Yeah, the 60 wouldn't be my first choice since they have the 106 and I have a real 106. Yeah. Even though it's different, but I'm surprised they haven't because they've already done the work on it because there's the new what was it, the JU06A?
Yeah.
Is that what, somebody had mentioned in the chat. Yeah. So the work's already done. Why isn't it in the cloud?
Yeah. Well,
that's supposed to be really good as well, isn't it?
And I still think they would get a huge amount of credit if they did something like a System 100 in a plugin. I might be, that might be heresy talking about, such a thing in a plugin form, but why not? If it's clearly there's a taste for it. Because Behringer are doing clones of it, and people are getting very excited about those. So, let's have a System 100 or a System 700 with drag and drop patch cables. Who knows?
That would be fantastic in chat room. So, Native VS says MKS 80.
Yeah.
Of course, people have asked for the 60 and 6, the JX8P, and Jupiter 4 and Jupiter 6.
Why don't they make everything though? You imagine if you had access to all of Roland's back catalogue. That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
It's not taking up any room, is it?
Throw in some Ace Tone stuff as well, and we'll have everything there. It'd be fantastic. Yeah. Excellent. Oh well, that's Roland Cloud again. So I guess that's really kind of it. Has anybody got anything else they want to ask our guest while we still have him? Are we? Did anything?
I did want to ask him something before.
Go for it.
I forgot.
Oh, you've forgotten. I've switched to you now. You can't forget now.
Why are you thinking of?
What software synths do you like to use? Because you've got some glorious hardware there, but do you use any software? Or?
Oh yeah. In fact, all my new age albums was all software, besides the real orchestras and the choirs and stuff. Omnisphere, huge Omnisphere fan.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah.
I really like Diva by Yuhi. Yeah. Any of their stuff. Oh my god, I can't remember the software that got cut off on PC and is now part of Logic. What's the
Alchemy?
One? Alchemy. Oh, I was so mad when I had Alchemy all over my last album. In fact, I was starting to do what you guys talked about earlier about sampling all sorts of stuff. I was going to create a library for it. And I'd spent a lot of time, and then they eradicated it for us poor PC users.
Well, your loss is our gain.
I'm still that's a tough one to swallow. Yeah. I still use it, but I really was looking forward to that 2.0 version with all the new goodies that was coming with that. But lucky, I'll have to buy a Mac.
Indeed, that's where they get you. Just so people know that Sean isn't throwing his voice. His video does seem to have frozen, but we've still got you there, so we're keeping you there. We've got your audio.
Yeah, in fact, a couple of you guys, I think Brian disappeared, and I'm frozen on the screen on my computer. But
the audio's good. We'll try and keep that there. And did anybody else have anything else? Oh, actually, Inky in the chat room wants to know, Sean, where you got your 3D Pac-Man lamp from.
Amazon.
There you go. That's where everything comes from now.
The ghost. I don't know if you saw it earlier. If the screen's still frozen, but the blue ghost is also on the other side. So.
That's right behind your head, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's very cool.
Final question from me. So with a lot of what you've been working on lately has been classical tracks and also the classic covers like Airwolf or Axel F. When you go to make your new age music, like what kind of songwriting process do you have? I mean, how do you get started on a song in your workflow?
Well, I'm a big chord guy. I love just experimenting with chord progression, just even changing the root note, the bass note, doing the same chord and experimenting with a different root note there and seeing what happens. That's usually my writing process for that type of music. Then I create a lead melody off of chords that I'm happy with.
Yeah, I'm not to say that I'm in any kind of way the same league as you, but that's how I start. Is always chords. I never start with a melody. I always go with the chords, and then the melody and the bass line kind of become apparent.
Yeah.
So at least I know I'm doing something right. Oh dear. So that kind of we've now hit the 2-hour mark. So I guess we should start wrapping things up. So let's
back thanks you.
Thank you ever so much. No, we do appreciate it. So let's start off with you, Sean. And you can do anything you like now because we can't see you. You're still frozen in your chair. What's happening in the world of Sean Christopher Dockery in the coming days and weeks? Anything interesting?
Well, still working on that independent film that I mentioned earlier. I'd love to say the name, but it may change, and I don't know if they want me to mention the name. So, anyway, but it's a lot of. First, they wanted a Clockwork Orange feel, so I've been doing a lot of classical synthesizer pieces. But now that they're re-finagling it, I don't know where the music is going, but I'll do whatever is required.
Cool.
But then I'm hoping to do another new age music album. I've had people tell me it would be a sin against God if I didn't do another one. I had such good, good words with the last one.
Yeah.
I was hoping to work with this awesome cellist, Tina Guo. Hopefully I'm not butchering her last name. She does everything from new age to heavy metal cellos, and I was set to work with her, but then she got a contract with Sony, and they won't allow her to work with anyone outside of Sony. So I'm in limbo trying to look for a very accomplished cellist. So anyone out there knows one. So that's coming up. And then I'm also hoping to release a classical synth music album. I was thinking of either finishing up the Planets by Holst. I completed half that suite, so I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do with that, and everything just changes month by month. New opportunities come up, and as long as I'm in this room, my wife is happy.
Excellent. Well, look, it's been absolutely fantastic to have you with us for the past couple of hours. I hope that it hasn't been too uncomfortable physically for you.
No.
But
no, thank you very much for having me.
And make sure you post up into the group, the Facebook group, when your projects hit the releases, and we'll make sure they get noticed.
Will do.
Cool. So thank you, Sean. Let's go to Cryss What's coming up for you in the next 7 days? Anything interesting?
Well, after that, nothing I am doing sounds that impressive, but I just continue to work on, my profit stuff. And then I said I've been as giddy as a schoolgirl for the last few days, but now I'll be as giddy as a schoolgirl. So
I see what
that'll
you
be
did
at least
there.
fun for the rest of the day.
Excellent. Well, if I think I've said in the past that I really wanted to learn how to play the bass, because when I was a young boy in my bedroom with my record player, it was always Beatles records, and I always wanted to be Paul. And even though I'm right-handed, I would play my tennis racket left-handed. And so I'm massively jealous of anyone that has anything that's kind of remotely connected like that is. And I'd love to. I'm jealous. There you go. Benjamin, how about you, sir? What are you up to?
Well,
more SSD work?
Not a great deal this week, really. I've ordered some new shelving and that's coming tomorrow because I ordered it on Amazon, and they can do the next day delivery thing.
Yeah.
So I'm ripping all this out, and I've got a new idea for the room, and it's all dependent on the shelving, and that's what I'm mainly going to be doing this week. So next week, when you see me next week, I'll have done no more music.
And you'll be sitting on a pile of rubble or something.
And I'll have LEDs behind me. Going for it. I've got a box of LEDs somewhere. I'm going to set them up.
My daughter bought one of these strips that's like 5 meters or something long strip of LEDs, and you can cut them cut to fit. Yeah. And she has it running across the entire length of her room, and it does all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff.
I have 180 feet of LEDs right now. And, going around my room wrapped 3 times.
Yeah, I would like to do that maybe one day, but
it looks great though, doesn't it? It does look great. It makes it look more studio-like.
Yeah, those accents at the bottom and at the top, they just look really cool.
Yeah,
very good.
Fancy, Sean's, but you guys have seen my keyboard rack setup, and then I have them going all the way around on my. I did these custom guitar racks with flame maple.
Mm-hmm.
So when it's light room, it's not that great, but when you have it dark, it's great, inspiring environment.
Well, I'll just stay here with my little LED lamp that changes color temperature at the touch of a button. You see, there you go, all nice and red glow there. That's all I have in here. That's about as fancy as I get. Cool, excellent. Well, good to hear.
What about you? Hey, Robbie, what do you got going on?
More editing of podcasts. I seem to have kind of let that slip, but that's okay because there's another one coming out soon. I can't say when and I can't say who, but it's really good fun. I really enjoyed this next one.
Got a great voice for those podcasts.
I've got a face for radio, as they say.
That's my mom and dad told me. I had a great face.
Yeah. So so I've been. There was one I did because, as you might have guessed, I do like talking, and I was doing this interview. Unfortunately, I can't say who I've been interviewing, but there's 2 different interviews, and we just went on and on. It was just brilliant, just getting all this information. But my bosses at SOS say, got to be 30 minutes, can't be longer than 30 minutes. And I twice now I've had to go and say, can I have another 10, maybe 15? No, got to be 30. So I've got all this great material that I probably won't be able to use. So I'm thinking about using it for something else. So now I've got to, but editing audio, conversations is really odd. It's not something I've ever done a lot of in the past. I've done single voice audio, that's fine. I've done music, that's fine. But having a conversation going and listening for the ums and the ahs and the and that you don't want to hear in the podcast, but it's just normal conversation. And then using tools like RX7 to get rid of bits of noise or mouth clicking and that kind of stuff. It's a learning curve.
I wonder if they could a separate one that was long form, because you figure the most popular podcast in the world, I think, is Joe Rogan, and if he gets in under 2.5 hours, that's crazy. Like it's usually 2.5, 3 hours.
Yeah, I think when you've got a brand as big as that, you can get away with it, and maybe that's something. There's one that I've got lined up that's going to be happening over a period of time. Again, I'm really excited, but I can't say who it is. And when they pitched the idea to me to do this, I said, absolutely, but this is not going to be a half-hour show. It can't be a half-hour show. It literally cannot be half an hour. It has to be either 2 half-hour shows or a 2-hour show or something like that. And they said, and they're really pushing back on it. And so I'm trying to come up with a way of either making like an episode thing out of it, or doing one big long one and then editing it down to half an hour if I can, and then putting that one in the bank and using it later on. So who knows? But I've got that to do. I've also, this is something I want to share because I don't know. I know Ben's got an Akai S6000. As you all know, I've kind of fallen back in love with it. You know, my darling that I fell in love with 20 years ago. I've managed to unpack her and get her working. One of the things I really wanted to get going was the original Axis editor software, which unfortunately fell by the wayside when they discontinued the Z series hardware, and was never developed as a 64-bit application. It was only ever 32-bit, and the only way that you could get it to work was to be running an XP installation, either as a virtual machine or as a separate piece of hardware. And I was determined to get it to work on my modern-day Mac running Catalina. I've done it, and I've done it with the help of Parallels, and I'm going to show you this. This is Axis running in a native fashion within Mac OS. It's using Parallels, which is obviously a virtualization application, but it has this coherence mode, so you can run native Windows applications as if they were native Mac applications, and it works. And this was a screen grab I picked up just before we came on air of the whole Axis software, which is a 32-bit Windows application that hasn't been developed for at least 15 odd years, working in my Mac OS, which it just made me very happy. So I've been exploring ways of bringing that back to life. And of course, the other benefit is that the SCSI to SD drive, the version 6 board that's in there, you can just plug a USB cable into the front of that. Forget the built-in USB stuff. Just plug it into the drive and plug it into your computer, and it shows up as an external drive, so you can just drag and drop. Oh. And it's absolutely brilliant.
Oh, I didn't know that worked.
Yeah, so if you've got the version 6 SCSI to SD card board,
I don't know which one I've got.
So the version 5 has micro SD, and the version 6 has a full SD.
Mine's got the bigger SD on it in S6000.
So that should be, and at the front next to the cartridge, the cart slot, you've got the USB. So if you just
use Axis,
no, you can't use Axis. But what it does is if you plug that into your modern computer, it just shows up as an external drive, whilst it's still mounted in the Akai. So you can do all sorts of things there. Which is
really cool.
It's very cool. It is very cool. So there's lots of different ways to skin that cat. So I've been exploring that one. And Sean's video is back. Yay!
Yeah, I turned it off and on, and it came back.
There you go. Simple IT logic. And the other thing that I'm going to be doing, I'm really bad. So the other day I bought one. Was it that one or was it the other? Let me just. So Yamaha, towards the end of the 80s, as sample technology was coming into fashion, they brought out this thing called the EMT10, which was a really basic kind of expander module that you could plug into any kind of MIDI thing, and it was just kind of to give you 12 different sampled sounds. You have two acoustic pianos, 2 electric pianos, a harpsichord guitar, strings, brass, choir, upright bass, electric bass, and slap bass. And that's it. Just presets. And there's really little control over it. But it sounds great. And it cost me like £30. This is brilliant.
Andrew Brooks is saying that he has one and he loves it.
Yeah, it's so good. The choirs and the strings have a kind of Mellotron-esque. It's just really, really good. So then I thought, well, it's feeling a bit lonely. So this afternoon I bought the EMT1, which is the FM module that goes with it. So it's got a little brother coming in a few days' time. So I can't help myself. I'm obsessed.
You are. And you are a Yamaha geek.
And I've learned that they also had a reverb unit that was the same thing. So I'm trying to find one of those at a reasonable price. So yeah, I'll be spending money and plugging new gear in and trying to find new MIDI ports in my rig, which I think I'm down to my last pair, and that's it. So anyway, that's me for the week.
MIDI through, it's the future.
Yeah, I think so. It has come to that point where I think, well, how much do I use? Can I?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I never use that multi-timbrally, so I can MIDI through.
Yeah.
I can start channel one.
Yeah.
I see a headset. I think Robbie has some synth midlife crisis.
I think I probably do. It's just I find myself with spare cash, and I think, well, I can't not. I mean, I'm still looking at the Essence FM, but that's like £1,200. But yeah, I'm certainly.
There's kind of a cliche over here in the States of men going and buying Corvettes, in their midlife crisis. So this is still cheaper.
Yeah. I'll just buy FM synths. Anyway, so that's
of course, if you buy one of Prince's, then that's Corvette money.
Yeah, I would have loved to, but there you go. Anyway, that's it. That's the show. Thanks ever so. Bless you, Ben.
Happy Father's Day to all you fellow fathers out there.
Absolutely, yes. Is it Father's Day in the US as well?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it doesn't always line up, does it? It doesn't always line up. So, yeah, happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. Happy birthday yesterday for you, Ben.
Thank you.
It's like your birthday. So, yeah, have a great day, have a great evening and afternoon, wherever you might be in the world. Thanks ever so much for watching. Thank you to Cryss, Ben, and, of course, to our guest, Sean, for joining us tonight. It's been an absolutely great show. We've really loved talking to you. Thanks to everyone that's in the chat room. Thanks to everyone that's watching after the event. Do like and subscribe and smash the bell button or the notifications or whatever it is that you crazy kids do.
And when you smash it, sample it too.
Yeah.
And then make it in.
Absolutely. And of course, if you want to join us throughout the rest of the week, then we have the ProSynth Network Facebook page, where the links down there somewhere in the description, and come and join us there and get involved. So thanks to everyone, and we'll see you all same time, same place next week. And I'm just going to fill because I haven't lined up my titles. So there we go. We've got the 4-shot. Say goodbye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.